It was a warm night in Lagos. The city lights shimmered across the skyline as Zuri Kamau sat on her balcony, sipping juice after a long day decorating a wedding hall. Her phone buzzed. It was her sister, Amani, a commercial pilot flying a private charter that night. Zuri answered cheerfully. "Hey, Sky Queen. How's the view up there?" But Amani's voice didn't sound right. It trembled slightly over the soft radio static. "Zuri, I think you need to know something," she said carefully. Zuri laughed, trying to lighten the mood. "Why do you sound so serious? Did your plane grow wings inside wings or what?" Amani didn't laugh. There was only silence, then a long sigh. "Your husband, Tay, he's on my flight, headed to Paris. And he's not alone." Zuri froze. Her hand went cold, the phone almost slipping from her fingers. The sound of her heartbeat suddenly grew louder than the cars below. "Not alone. What do you mean?" she whispered. Amani hesitated. "He's with a woman, Zuri. And it doesn't look like business." For a few seconds, the world around Zuri stopped moving. The city sounds blurred into one low hum. The man she had built her life with, the one who called her his peace, was now flying through the clouds with someone else. Her voice cracked, almost too soft to hear. "Thank you, Amani." And as the night breeze brushed her face, Zuri realized her marriage had just taken off without her. Just a few weeks ago, Zuri Kamau's life looked perfect, at least from the outside. She and her husband, Tay, were the kind of couple people admired. They hosted charity events together, smiled for magazine photos, and vacationed in Zanzibar, posting sunset selfies with captions like, "My forever co-pilot." Everyone called them a power couple, a picture of love and success. But behind those shiny photos, cracks had already started to show. Zuri had noticed small changes. Tay's sudden late meetings, his phone always face down, and his new habit of urgent weekend trips that didn't make sense. Sometimes she'd text him goodnight and see it marked read, but no reply ever came. She told herself he was just busy. She trusted him, because that's what love does. It blinds you until the truth burns your eyes wide open. The night after Amani's shocking call, Zuri couldn't sleep. She kept pacing the living room, trying to convince herself it had to be a misunderstanding. Maybe there was some business reason. Maybe she heard wrong. But the next morning, her phone buzzed. Amani had sent her something, a single photo. It was a shot from the jet, discreet but clear. Tay was sitting beside a woman, smiling, his hand resting on her. Zuri zoomed in, her stomach twisting. The woman's face came into focus. It was Lorado. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Lorado wasn't just anyone. She was Zuri's former assistant. A young woman Zuri had mentored, guided, even helped pay rent when times were tough. She had trusted Lorado like a little sister. And now, that same girl was flying to Paris with her husband. Zuri sank to the floor, phone still in hand, staring at the image. Every memory rushed back. Lorado staying late at work, saying Tay had asked her to handle urgent tasks. The way Tay defended her when Zuri once said Lorado seemed too involved. All the signs she'd ignored suddenly screamed in her head. Her heart broke, but what hurt more was the humiliation. The betrayal wasn't just romantic. It was layered, cruel, and deeply personal. Two people she had trusted most had turned her kindness into weakness. Zuri pressed her palms against her face, shaking, but she didn't cry for long. There was anger now, not loud but sharp and cold. "You used my heart as your runway," she whispered, "but I'll decide where this flight lands." She stood up, wiped her tears, and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't broken. She was just waking up. Zuri knew one thing for sure. The world saw a perfect marriage, but she had seen the hidden flight, and she was done pretending not to know. Zuri didn't scream. She didn't throw her phone or break anything. She just stood there, frozen, staring into the quiet night as Amani's words echoed in her mind. The city lights outside her window blurred through her tears. She took a deep breath, forcing her voice to stay calm. "Thank you, Amani," she whispered softly. "Land safe." Then she hung up. The silence that followed was deafening. Zuri walked slowly to her studio, the one filled with flowers, ribbons, and half-finished wedding decorations. It smelled like roses and perfume, but tonight it felt like poison. She sat down at her work table, staring at the white roses she had been preparing for a client's wedding. Every petal looked like a cruel joke, mocking her. How many times had she helped brides design their dream weddings, while her own dream was quietly falling apart? Her mind replayed Tay's last words before he left. "Don't wait up. It's just business." She had smiled that night, kissed him goodbye, and wished him a safe trip. And now those same words felt like knives. Just business. He had turned their love into a lie so easily. Zuri's eyes fell on the suit hanging near their wardrobe, Tay's favorite one, the black one he wore when he proposed to her on the beach years ago. She remembered how he knelt in the sand, promising forever. That memory used to make her heart flutter. Tonight, it made her sick. Without thinking, she grabbed the suit and walked to the backyard. The night breeze brushed her face as she lit a match. The flame trembled for a second, then caught on the fabric. She watched silently as the suit burned, the smoke curling up into the dark sky. It wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about release, about letting go of the version of herself that kept forgiving, explaining, and hoping. She whispered under her breath, he wanted luxury in Paris. I'll give him ruin in Lagos. The fire reflected in her eyes, fierce and calm at the same time. When the last ember died, Zuri turned back inside. The studio was still filled with soft music from the radio, playing a love song that once made her smile. She turned it off. The silence felt better. She sat down again, opened her laptop, and began to list everything they owned together: the company, the accounts, the house. Her pain was turning into focus. Her tears were gone. By the time the clock hit midnight, Zuri Kamau wasn't just a heartbroken wife anymore. She was a woman with a plan, quiet, steady, and burning from the inside. And while Tay was flying through the clouds with another woman, Zuri was already preparing for his crash land. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over Lagos, but Zuri hadn't slept a minute. Her eyes were heavy, but her mind was sharp, still replaying that call from the night before. Around 8 a.m., she heard a knock on the door. When she opened it, Amani stood there, still in her pilot uniform, looking exhausted but determined. Before Zuri could say a word, Amani wrapped her arms around. For a moment, both sisters just stood there, holding on to each other, one broken, one guilty for being the bearer of truth. I wasn't sure if I should have told you, Amani said quietly, her voice trembling. But I couldn't lie in the clouds, Zuri. I had to tell you. Zuri took a deep breath, her eyes glistening. You did the right thing, she whispered. You flew through his lies before they could crash me. They sat down in the living room. The air smelled like coffee, but neither of them touched their mugs. Amani reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive and a few printed photos. I didn't want to show you this, she said, sliding them across the table. But you need to see it. Zuri hesitated, then opened the laptop. On the screen, the security footage from the private terminal played. Tay walking hand in hand with Lorado, smiling, helping her onto the jet. He looked relaxed, happy-free. For a long moment, Zuri just stared. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the laptop. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was proof. There was no denying it, no story to cover it up. The truth was standing right in front of her in full color. Her tears finally came, but they weren't the desperate, painful kind. They were quiet, the kind that wash away confusion. She wiped them gently and smiled weakly. You just saved me from years of pretending, she told Amani. Amani's own eyes filled with tears. You deserve better than lies, Zuri. You've always deserved more. The sisters sat there in silence for a while, just breathing. Outside, life went on. The city buzzed, horns honked, people laughed. But inside that room, something powerful was shifting. Zuri wasn't thinking about revenge yet. She wasn't even thinking about Tay. She was thinking about clarity, control, and how she was going to rebuild, not in anger, but with precision. Amani reached across the table and held her hand. Whatever you decide to do, I've got your back, she said firmly. Zuri squeezed her hand and nodded. Then let's plan it right. No shouting, no chaos. Just the truth, loud enough for everyone to hear. That morning, the two sisters didn't just share heartbreak, they formed an alliance. And together, they decided Tay's flight of lies had just met its final landing strip. 2 days later, Zuri heard the familiar sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Her chest tightened, but her face stayed calm. She stood by the window as Tay stepped out, dressed sharply, sunglasses on, carrying expensive shopping bags that screamed Paris. He walked in with that same confident smile, the one that used to melt her heart, but now made her stomach twist. Honey, I'm home, he said cheerfully, placing the bags on the table. Brought you something from the trip. Zuri smiled faintly, her voice soft and smooth. Welcome home, love. How was Paris? Tay froze for a second, his eyes narrowing slightly. Ah, you knew, he asked, half nervous, half suspicious. Zuri tilted her head, her smile never fading. Of course, she said gently. You told me before leaving, remember? He relaxed immediately, laughing a little too loud. Ah, yes. I must have forgotten. It was just work, boring meetings. Zuri nodded, pretending to listen as he spoke, watching his every gesture. He kissed her forehead like nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just destroyed everything between them. She stood there, letting him believe his lies, because she had already decided, this time, she wouldn't react with tears. She would respond with strategy. That night, after Tay fell asleep, Zuri quietly got up from bed. The house was dark and silent except for the hum of the air conditioner. She went to his office, turned on the desk lamp, and sat at his computer. Her fingers moved quickly and calmly, typing passwords she had long memorized. She opened their shared business account, the same one she had used to build her event company from scratch. Her eyes scanned the transactions, and her breath caught. Hotel bookings in Paris, designer jewelry, fine dining bills, even the private jet charter, all paid with her company's fund. Zuri leaned back in her chair, her heart pounding, not from pain but from realization. It wasn't just betrayal of love, it was theft. He had used her sweat, her hard work, her brand, to impress another woman. She opened another tab and downloaded every file, every receipt, every transfer. She created a secret folder on her laptop labeled Truth. Then she backed it all up on a flash drive. Her hands were steady, her face emotionless. When she was done, she looked at Tay's sleeping figure through the glass door. For a moment, she felt the old ache rise in her chest, the memories of their laughter, their promises, their life. But it faded quickly. Under her breath, she whispered, "You didn't just cheat on me. You stole from me." Zuri turned off the light and walked quietly back to bed, slipping under the covers beside him. He slept soundly, completely unaware that his perfect little world was about to fall apart, and that his wife, the woman he thought would break, was already planning his silent ruin. Zuri woke up the next morning with a strange calm inside her. The kind that comes after a storm, when you've cried all your tears and all that's left is focus. She made herself coffee, opened her laptop, and started making calls. No one would know it yet, but the game had officially begun. Her first call was to her lawyer, Mrs. Dada, a sharp, confident woman who had helped Zuri build her company from the ground up. "I need to freeze the joint business account," Zuri said firmly. "Every naira, every transfer, every card." The lawyer didn't ask why. She just said, "Consider it done." By the end of the day, Tay's access to their shared money was quietly gone, and he didn't even know it. Next, Zuri began her plan, not for heartbreak, but for revenge. She drafted a perfect excuse: their wedding anniversary. "It's been a rough few months," she told Tay sweetly over dinner. "Let's host something beautiful, a charity night, something to remind everyone who we are." Tay looked touched, maybe even proud. "That's my classy wife," he said, kissing her hand. "You always rise above." Zuri smiled back, hiding the flicker of amusement in her eyes. He really thought she was forgiving him. Within days, she booked the ballroom at their favorite five-star hotel, the same place where they'd celebrated their first anniversary. It was elegant, romantic, and about to become the stage for his downfall. She reached out to top investors, media outlets, and old friends, personally inviting them to a night of love and legacy. The guest list was glittering with powerful names: influencers, business partners, and society figures. Everyone loved Zuri's events, and this one promised to be her biggest yet. But she didn't stop there. Using an anonymous invite, she added one more name: Lorado. She made sure the message sounded formal and polite, signed only with a special guest request. And because Zuri believed in poetic justice, she hired a discreet PR videographer, someone who would capture the beautiful moments of the. What no one knew was that those cameras would also capture the truth. Every single detail was planned perfectly, from the lights to the music to the timing of the big reveal. Zuri rehearsed her speech, calm and graceful, never once letting her emotions show. Tay had no idea what was coming. He thought his wife had forgiven him, that her silence was peace, not preparation. He even bragged to his friends about how lucky he was to have such a mature, understanding woman. The night before the event, Zuri stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her golden earring. Her reflection looked strong, unshaken. She whispered to herself with a half-smile, "You wanted Paris exposure, right, Tay? Well, you'll get it Lagos style." And as she turned off the light, she knew tomorrow wouldn't just be an anniversary. It would be a reckoning, beautifully wrapped, camera-ready, and unforgettable. The night of the anniversary gala arrived, and Lagos glittered with excitement. The ballroom at the Grand Mirage Hotel sparkled with gold lights, live jazz music, and elegantly dressed guests sipping champagne. Everyone had come to celebrate Zuri and Tay Kamau, the city's perfect power couple. Tay walked through the crowd with his usual charm, shaking hands, smiling for photos, soaking in the admiration. "My wife outdid herself again," he boasted proudly to one of his friends. "She's forgiven, she's graceful. I'm truly lucky." Across the room, Zuri stood near the stage in a breathtaking golden gown. Her hair was swept back, her eyes calm and unreadable. On the surface, she looked like the proud, loving wife everyone expected. But inside her, quiet fire burned, steady and precise. When it was time for speeches, Tate eagerly took the microphone first. He clinked his glass and smiled widely. "To my queen," he said, gesturing toward Zuri, "the woman who makes everything I do worth it." The crowd cheered and raised their glasses, snapping photos and recording video. Tay basked in the spotlight, completely unaware that the ground beneath him was about to vanish. Then Zuri stepped up to the microphone, her smile gentle but her voice firm. "Thank you, everyone," she began, her tone smooth and confident. "Tonight isn't just a celebration of love." She paused, looking around the room, her eyes landing on Lorado in the back corner, who was already shifting uncomfortably. "It's a lesson in loyalty." The crowd grew silent, curious. At that moment, the lights dimmed and the projector came on. The screen behind them flickered, and then the security footage played. Gasps filled the ballroom. There was Tay, boarding a private jet, hand in hand with Lorado, both smiling like a couple on vacation. Their faces were unmistakable. The entire room turned toward Tay, who stood frozen, his wine glass trembling in his hand. Lorado's eyes widened in panic, and she tried to step back into the crowd. Zuri continued calmly, her voice cutting through the whispers. For months, my husband told me he was traveling for business. What he didn't tell me was that he used our company's money, the sweat and work of my team, especially the women who trusted him, to fund a private getaway with his assistant. Cameras clicked rapidly. Reporters leaned forward, recording every word. Zuri's voice grew stronger, not bitter, just steady and proud. But tonight, every stolen dollar is being returned to those same women, the ones who built this company. This is not revenge. This is restoration. The audience erupted in applause. People stood, clapping, shouting her name. A few women wiped tears from their eyes. Tay, red-faced and furious, stormed toward the exit as flashes from the photographers followed him. Lorado slipped out behind him, her head down, trying to hide from the crowd's judgmental stares. Zuri stood tall under the golden lights, holding the mic like a queen reclaiming her throne. The media swarmed her, guests surrounded her with praise, and for the first time in a long while Zuri smiled, not out of pain but out of power. That night, she didn't just expose a lie. She rewrote the story of what it meant to be betrayed and still rise higher. By the next morning, Lagos couldn't stop talking about the anniversary gala. The video from Zuri's speech, and the shocking footage she showed, spread like wildfire across social media. Every blog, every gossip page, every news outlet had the same headline: Business tycoon exposed by his wife at anniversary gala. Within hours, the internet turned Zuri Kamau into a symbol of strength and power. People called her the woman who turned heartbreak into justice. Influencers reposted her quotes, and women across the country shared clips with captions like, "This is how you handle betrayal." Meanwhile, Tay's world was collapsing. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing, clients pulling out, investors canceling contracts, sponsors withdrawing support. His company's social media pages were flooded with angry comments calling him a fraud. Overnight, the man who once bragged about his success became a public embarrassment. And Lorado, she disappeared. Her job was gone, her reputation destroyed. People who once called her ambitious now whispered homewrecker behind her back. No company wanted to be associated with her name. She had built her career on someone else's trust, and now she had lost it all. While chaos followed them, Zuri stayed silent. She didn't post anything, didn't respond to interviews. She didn't have to. Her calm silence spoke louder than words. Instead, she focused on her work. New clients poured in, sending messages like, "We admire your grace." Her brand, Zuri Design, suddenly became a household name. Every woman wanted her to plan their events, not just for her talent, but for her strength. One evening, as she was finalizing a new deal, Tay showed up at her office. He looked tired, smaller than she remembered, his usual confidence gone. He stood there, holding a small box, his voice shaking. "Zuri, please," he said softly. "I made a mistake. I was stupid. I can fix this. I just need you." She looked at him for a long moment, her expression calm. "You turned our home into a lie," she said quietly. "I just turned your lies into truth." He tried to speak again, but she simply handed him an envelope, the divorce papers. "This isn't hate," she added. "It's closure." Tay left the office in silence, the reality finally sinking in. A few weeks later, the divorce was finalized. Thanks to her lawyer, Zuri kept the house, the company, and every legal right she had worked for. She didn't just survive, she won. Tay, on the other hand, was left with nothing but regret and debt. The luxurious life he chased had burned down around him. One night, as Zuri sat on her balcony, watching the Lagos skyline glitter in the distance, she smiled softly. She had lost love, yes, but she had gained peace, power, and herself again. And in that quiet moment, she realized something simple and true. Sometimes the greatest revenge is not destruction, it's freedom. Weeks passed after the chaos. The noise faded, the headlines slowed down, and Zuri finally started breathing again. The pain that once felt heavy in her chest had begun to loosen its grip. She spent her days working, rebuilding her peace, and learning to smile without forcing it. Then one morning, Amani called. "Get dressed," she said. "We're flying today." Zuri hesitated. Flying. The last time she thought of airplanes, all she could picture was betrayal, the private jet, the lies, the heartbreak. But this time it was different. This wasn't about running away. It was about rising again. When Zuri arrived at the airstrip, Amani was already there, wearing her pilot uniform and that confident grin she always had. "Ready to touch the sky again?" she teased. Zuri took a deep breath, her heart pounding. "I think I'm ready," she said softly. As the plane began to move, she closed her eyes. The engines roared, the ground trembled, and then slowly they lifted off. The city below began to shrink, the clouds opened up, and sunlight poured through the windows. Zuri leaned toward the glass, looking down at Lagos, the same city where her life had fallen apart, now glimmering like gold beneath her. She whispered to herself, "He flew to Paris for pleasure. I'm flying to purpose." Amani's voice came through the intercom, warm and proud. "Altitude steady, and so is my sister." Zuri laughed, really laughed, for the first time in a long while. It was light, unguarded, full of life. The kind of laughter that comes when you finally realize the storm is behind you. For a while, they flew in silence, just the hum of the engines and the whisper of the wind. Amani glanced back and smiled. "You know, I was scared you'd never fly again," she said. Zuri shook her head. "I almost didn't. But then I remembered, wings aren't meant to stay folded." They shared a quiet look, one filled with sisterhood, survival, and gratitude. As the plane cut through the clouds, Zuri felt something deep inside her shift. She wasn't the same woman who cried on the floor weeks ago. She wasn't the woman who begged for love or explanations. She was the woman who chose herself. The higher they climbed, the lighter she felt. Every mile they soared erased a little more pain, a little more of the past. When they finally leveled out above the clouds, Amani said softly, "Look outside. This is what freedom looks like." Zuri smiled, tears in her eyes. "And this time," she said, "I'm not afraid of falling." Below them, the city sparkled, not as a reminder of what she'd lost, but of everything she had reclaimed. Her peace, her strength, her wings. For the first time in a long time, Zuri wasn't running from her past. She was flying toward her future. 1 year later, Lagos looked different to Zuri, brighter, freer, and full of new beginnings. The same city that once held her heartbreak now carried her dreams. That morning, she stood on the stage of a grand conference hall, wearing a white power suit that shimmered under the lights. Behind her, a huge banner read, "Skyline Designs Africa, Women Rising Beyond Limits." Zuri smiled as the crowd settled. Her company had become one of the fastest-growing brands in Africa, a mix of interior design, event luxury, and aviation partnerships. Every plane her firm helped design carried a touch of her story, strength, class, and rebirth. She took a deep breath, looked around at the sea of faces, and began her speech. "A year ago, I thought betrayal broke me," she said, her voice calm but powerful. "But it only taught me how to rise." The audience leaned in, silent and moved. "Sometimes pain is not the end," she continued. "It's just turbulence before you find your true altitude." Amani sat in the front row, smiling with pride. She knew exactly how far her sister had come, from the night of heartbreak to the day she built an empire from the ashes. Zuri's tone turned warm but fierce. "They say revenge is best served cold," she said, pausing as the crowd chuckled softly. Then she smiled and added, "But I served mine at 30,000 feet, above their reach." The room erupted in applause, cheers echoing through the hall. Cameras flashed, and women in the audience stood to clap for her, not just as a businesswoman, but as a survivor. Later, as the sun set, Zuri walked toward her private jet waiting on the runway. On its silver tail gleamed her company's motto, "Fly higher, no permission needed." She paused for a moment, feeling the soft wind against her face. Then, with quiet confidence, she boarded the jet. No tears, no regrets. Just peace, power, and freedom. Zuri Kamau, the woman who turned heartbreak into flight, was finally flying on her own terms.